How is everything in Roero?
Traduce. Ho bisogno di translator.
Ok, perfetto.
Allora,
Come la situazione per il tempo nel Roero?
Come va nel Roero, come il tempo, the weather, you mean?
il tempo è asciutto, sono più di 150 anni che non è così asciutto. Quest'anno abbiamo avuto il 50% delle precipitazioni normali in tutta la zona di Alba.
So it's a very, very dry vintage. So we are having, so far, we had the 50% less rain in the area of Roero and Lange. It's been 150 years since it's been like this.
Wow. Wow. I understand that the last time you had snow was on the 8th of December. Is that correct?
Ah, si diceva che l'ultima volta che ha nevicato è l'8 dicembre.
Sì, ma pochissima però. Proprio.
Yeah, and quite few snow,
Really?
by the
Just
way.
a tiny bit, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Sì, sì. Il 21 è stata grandissima annata, specialmente per i nebbioli. Ma 22 vedremo.
Yeah, the 2021 has been a great vintage, in particular for Nebbiolo.
Right.
For 22, we will see. We don't know yet.
Well,
We need to.
Usually when you said it's very dry, there's no snow in the winter. You know, if the year before there's been enough rain, then that's fine, right? It was 21. Was there enough moisture in the soil? Enough water reserves?
Se nel 2021 ha piovuto a sufficienza affinché ci siano le scorte per il 2022.
Per il 21 è andata bene, però scorte no, perché il terreno anche 3-4 metri sottoterra è proprio, c'è la polvere.
So it was rain was enough for 21, but not enough for 22, because now already if you go 3-4 meters underground, it's dry. So it was not enough for this year as well.
Bisogna sperare che marzo e aprile piova.
We are hoping that in the next months it's going to rain.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, finger crossed.
From what everyone tells me in the Lange and now the Roero, I mean, 2019, 2020, 2021 were just beautiful growing seasons. So, you know, maybe 3 in a row is all you get. Maybe a fourth year is, you know, we'll see what happens.
Diceva che appunto nelle Langhe gli hanno detto che 19, 20, 21 sono stati bellissimi, quindi dice può essere che questo ci sia un'annata
anche 17, anche 16. Sì, siamo abituati troppo bene adesso.
Yeah, Roberto thought that also 16, 17, 18 were very good. So now maybe we are used to super vintages. So
right. That's a good point. Yeah. All right. Now you're in the Roero. I'm going to put up a map here of the district, and if you can show people 1 second here. They had them up and went down. So, okay, if you can show people exactly, you're in Canale.
Yes.
And you got to switch back here. Okay.
I'm not seeing it yet.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to.
Okay.
Okay. Here's a map of the Roero, which should be up in just a second here.
Loading.
Oh, there we are. Okay.
Okay.
And Canale is in the northern part of the Roero, correct?
È la parte nord.
Yeah, the northern part.
Lui ha un segno così segna. Però lui non vede più.
No, devi spiegarmi.
Allora, devi guardare Canale, poi guardi a sinistra verso west e lì c'è un cru che si chiama Green Color, Santissima Trinità.
On the other side is
over here.
Towards, yes,
okay.
It's Santissima Trinità. It's where we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many hectares of vineyards you own, and tell us a little bit about.
Trinità 17 hectares. It's a big crew for Malvira.
Yeah, the Malvira is the biggest crew that we have. It's 17 hectares, sorry. It's on the 43 total that we have.
Abbiamo 50-50 Nebbiolo, grapes, and Arnese.
Okay. Well, we'll talk a lot about, we'll have a lot of different examples of Roero from the Trinità vineyard today. But before we talk about the wines, let's talk a little bit about how you started in the industry. I read on the website that you were kind of a rebel. I mean, you made your first wine. It was a Roero Arnese. And tell us about that story. You did something different than what your family did.
Diceva che tu sei stato un po' ribelle, che volevo sapere la storia di Malvira, che hai fatto l'Arnese in modo diverso da come faceva la tua famiglia.
Sì, beh, prima non solo la mia famiglia, ma anche molte altre famiglie, l'Arnese veniva vinificato dolce come vino da dessert, un po' tipo moscato, ma sempre in quantità proprio minime, piccolissime.
Yeah, before it was not only his family, but in general here in the area, Arnese was vinified, produced as a sweet wine, and that's poi l'hai iniziato a fare secco.
Sì, ho cominciato prima volta nel 1972.
And in 1972 he made for the first time the dry Arnese is a dry wine, so that's the change.
Have you and the growers there, have you been surprised by how popular Roero Arnese is these days?
Siete sorpresi da quanto è famoso l'Arnese adesso?
Ma famoso non penso, cioè, Montrachet è più famoso per adesso, per adesso. Chissà, fra qualche anno, non so.
Yeah, he's doubting. Maybe he's not that famous, but maybe Montrachet is more famous. So in some years, maybe.
Well, well, it depends on your definition. I know in the United States, it's very famous. I mean, it's you have some wineries that, I mean, they will sell out their production, you know, what's exported here in almost 3 months, you know, and then the people have to wait another 9 months before the wine's out. So it's become very popular. I think it's because it has such good fruit to it, and also the acidity is not too high. I think sometimes Americans, they don't want, for example, certain wines from Friuli, which are lovely, very different style, but they're very high, very powerful acidity. I think that's maybe not as agreeable to some palates as others. So, but I would say it's been very successful here. I see you have a bottle there of the 2020 classic Arnese. Now you make 3 or 4 different styles of Arnese, correct?
Si diceva che è particolarmente famosa adesso negli Stati Uniti, soprattutto forse perché la sua acidità non è così alta. Diceva che ti ha chiesto che voi producete 3 o altri 3 tipi di Arnese, vero? Yes, we produce
single vineyard, 3 different single vineyard.
Okay.
Invece il classic Arnese, grapes, l'uva, arriva da 5 diverse vigne messe insieme.
Yeah, this one, the classic Arnese, is made using grapes from 5 different vineyards.
Okay.
Blend of that. And then we have the 3 single vineyards that we produce, which are Santissima Trinità, Renesio, and Saglietto. The 3 different vineyards from which we produce Arnese.
E Renesio è la vigna più importante del territorio, perché i primi documenti nel mondo che parlano di uva Arnese sono in questa proprietà nel 1478.
In particular, Renesio is very famous and important here in the area of Arnese because it's there in that vineyard that we have writings of production of Arnese starting from 1478. So it's very beginning of Arnese.
Era una vecchia proprietà della famiglia nobile del territorio, famiglia i conti Roero, noble family, Roero family.
Okay.
Yeah, it was property of the Count Roero, the family that owned the area, the ruled over the area.
And tell me about the vineyard itself, Renesio. Is it the soils there better for Arnese? Do you also plant some Nebbiolo there?
il terreno del Renese, se va bene più parlarne, se c'è anche il nebbiolo.
Renesio dei nostri vigneti, dove abbiamo Arneise, è l'area più ricca di calcare, di chalky soil.
Right.
Invece Trinità è molto più ricca di sand, sabbia.
Okay.
Sì, però in entrambi gli appezzamenti noi abbiamo Nebbiolo e Arneise. Diciamo che il nebbiolo che produciamo a Renesio è un nebbiolo che ricorda più i nebbioli di Barolo, mentre invece a Trinità sono proprio i classici nebbioli del Roero, molto profumati, eleganti, certe annate sembrano quasi dei Pinot Noir.
Yeah, in both the vineyards, Trinità and Renesio, that Roberto was talking about, we have both Arneise and Nebbiolo grapes. In Trinità, which has a sandy soil typical of Roero, we produce a Roero which is very typical, has the characteristics of the classic Roero, while in the area of Renesio, they are more similar to the area, the wines produced in the area of Barolo.
Okay.
So in Trinità, they are more similar, we can say, to the Pinot Noir.
Sì, un po' Burgundy style, little bit
Exactly.
style.
Exactly. Okay. Very good. Now, I've enjoyed the Renesio for many, many years, and I've always thought it was the top example, really one of the top examples of Roero Renese. And then a few years ago, I had your Riserva from the Salietto vineyard, which I think is just exceptional. I mean, as good as the Renesio is. Of course, this is a Riserva now, but it's just an exceptional wine. And with all these Arneses, you don't have any wood treatment, do you?
What, with all the Arneise?
You only age them in steel or cement, right? You don't use any wood?
Dove usiamo il legno.
Per Salietto, sì, 50% in oak, 50% in steel. E il Salietto dal 2018, da quando abbiamo cominciato a produrre Roero Arneise riserva, abbiamo cambiato anche un po' stile di legno, anziché vinificarlo in fusti in double barrique, abbiamo preso Big Barrel Austria Oak da 2500 litri.
Okay. So 2018 was the first vintage of that wine, right? And you decided to make wine partially in Tonneau double barrique and also large Austrian oak. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find that wine ages longer, the Salietto, the Riserva, than the Renesio, or is it about the same?
Come l'invecchiamento, posso invecchiare di più questo Salietto riserva? O
Ma i Salietto che abbiamo vecchi in casa sono vini che dopo 10 anni sono ancora buoni, molto buoni, ma anche il Renesio. Renesio 2008, anche se è un vino che è in acciaio, è ancora un vino molto interessante.
Yeah, actually both of them. So we still have some bottles of Renesio 2008, which are still very good. And the same for Salietto. So we have bottles of old vintages, 11, 13, which are still very good. So potentially similar, we can say.
Okay.
Sì, io penso come vengono vinificati adesso gli Arnesi, come sono le uve adesso, è un vino che può andare avanti benissimo 15 anni senza problemi.
Yeah, so he's saying that for how we vinify, we produce the Arneise and the quality of the grapes make this wine a wine that can age up to 15 years.
Wow, I think people are always surprised, not only Arneise, but most Italian whites, how beautifully they age. I know I was just at the Tre Picchietti tasting in Chicago, and one of the editors from Gamboroso was saying, he just actually doesn't even care that much for Italian whites when they're released. They need it is 3 or 4 years in the bottle, and then they just bring out all these new flavors, complexities, and I would agree with them. I think that's an important point to remember. By the way, Roberto, your il tuo importatore nel Chicago, Beverly Malin, is with us today, and she just mentioned, thank you, Beverly, that she has the 2010 Taglietto available here in Chicago. So, yeah, it's still tasting out delicious, still tasting out wonderfully. So,
sì, lei ha sempre delle bottiglie nascoste.
Yeah, she always has some hidden bottles.
right. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And in total, how many bottles of Roero Arnese do you produce in a year?
Tutto, tutti adesso di Arnese solitamente facciamo 80, 90, 100, 120.000 bottiglie, 130.
120,000, 130,000
Sì, 10.000 casse.
in total, including all the classic and the cru.
Okay. And we know the United States is a big market. Beverly does a great job here in Chicago. What are other strong markets for you, specifically for Arnese?
Mercati importanti per l'Arnese.
Svizzera è un vecchio mercato, serve molto buono. Scandinavia.
Ok.
Scandinavia è un ottimo mercato. United States, anche un ottimo mercato. Poi vecchi mercati che abbiamo anche sono Japan.
I would think Japan would love that wine.
Sì,
Yeah. Okay.
Da tanti anni, però non grandi volumi, perché i giapponesi bevono poco.
Okay.
Bevono di più i norvegesi.
Yeah, Norwegian, they drink more than Japanese.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
is less.
Little big quantity.
I love it in Norway. Okay. I know Scandinavia is a big market for many Italian producers. So
Yeah.
let's
Norway.
Go ahead. Go.
No, poi altre?
Italia, naturalmente.
Of course. Certainly.
Specialmente però il nord Italia.
The north of Italy.
Mostly North Italian, right? Okay. And what are some of your
principali? Come?
What are some of your favorite pairings with Roero? What foods?
Qui in Piemonte li usiamo molto con le entrée, con gli antipasti, quindi con piatti delicati. Poi la cucina di pesce, cucina di mare va benissimo. Pasta, sono anche molto interessanti.
Yeah, in Piedmont in particular, we usually pair the Arnese with the starters, so the typical starters, Piedmontese starters. Then we pair it with fish, of course, different courses of fish, or with some kind of pasta as well. It's very good.
Sì, con certi tipi di pasta dove c'è la carne o dove i secondi, il Piemonte della tradizione vino rosso.
Yeah, we are still, if the pasta has sauce with meat,
Of course.
and with second courses in Piemonte, we are still drinking red wine.
Sì, la generazione prima della mio padre, mio nonno, non bevevano vino bianco quando mangiavano.
Yeah, it was the generation before Roberto's, like his father, his grandfather, they never used to drink white wine.
Sì, Barbera, Dolcetto,
Only
Yeah.
Chi beveva il vino bianco era considerato una persona debole, quindi era un vino per le donne.
Yeah, the white wine was for women.
Really? If I said that, I'd be in trouble, but you can say that. So it's your wine. So, but yeah, I can't imagine, going through life and not drinking white wine, because it's, to me, it's just more refreshing, and it's just, and I think I love all types of wines, especially Italian wines, but if all I did was drink red wine, I think I would maybe lose some of my appreciation for it. So whites can kind of give you a whole different perspective on what the industry is all about. So let's put up a couple pictures here, and we'll move over to your red wines, your Roero. Tell me a little bit about. Let's get a vineyard shot up here. Here's the Trinità vineyard. Should be up in a second.
La via Trinità, quello che vedi, i filari che ci sono subito in primo piano sono versante sud.
Hi, I'm not able to answer the call right now. But please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, oh, Roberto was telling that the vineyards that we see in the front of the pictures, they are facing south.
Il sud, sì.
Yeah,
Poi vedi c'è la piccola chiesa.
the small church of Holy Trinity.
Ecco, i filari in quella direzione sono in direzione est.
And after the church, we have vines facing east after the church.
Quindi la parte più alta della collina è Nebbiolo, poi da metà collina a scendere è Arneis.
We have Nebbiolo at the top, behind the church, and then on the lower part of the hill, we have the Arneis.
Mentre la parte a destra rispetto alla chiesa, qui sono Arneis, ma Arneis per Rive Gauche, per lo spumante. E quello è esposizione a nord-ovest.
We have on the right of the church, we have the chapel. We have Arneis, but is the Arneis used for the Rive Gauche, for the sparkling? And they face northwest.
Okay, let me put up another photo here. Here's a map from your website of the vineyard itself.
Sì, dove c'è la foto con Villa Tiboldi che è al sud.
Okay, here's a map of the vineyard. Explain that better.
Sì.
Yeah, so we have the Arneis at the top behind the chapel. Santissima Trinità is the one for Rive Gauche.
Sì.
And then we have the Nebbiolo at the top, you see.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the rest is the Arneis facing east.
Sì, qui dietro la casa, qui dove facciamo Trinità, selezione di Trinità.
You see, we have in the middle, at the bottom actually, there is Malvira, the winery, and behind Malvira, there is the vineyard of Arneis where we produce the selection of Santissima Trinità, the cru.
Here's a shot of the winery. In case people haven't been there, it's absolutely beautiful.
Sì, qui si vede la cantina. Sì. Qui è l'estremo, la parte più vicino al paese, dove un pochino più avanti la Trinità cambia nome ed è San Guglielmo, dove noi produciamo questo vino rosso. Sì. Questo vino rosso dove facciamo un blend di Nebbiolo, Barbera, Bonarda, Piemontese.
Here, the picture is taken from the part of Santissima Trinità, which is nearest to Canale, to the village.
Okay.
And Santissima Trinità takes the name of San Guglielmo, which is a part where we produce another of our wines, a red wine, a blend.
Un Langhe Rosso.
It's a Langhe Rosso with Nebbiolo Barbera and Bonarda Piemontese.
Sì, questo è un vecchio vino che produceva già il nostro nonno materno.
Yeah, it's a tradition of the family producing this wine. It was their grandfather that produced San Guglielmo.
Sorry. How old are the oldest vineyards in Trinità?
Le vigneti più vecchi che hanno quanti anni?
Adesso a Trinità i più vecchi sono quelli che abbiamo piantato nel 1987.
The oldest,
1986.
1987.
87, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And when did you first make a Roero Rosso from Trinità? When did you first bottle it that way?
I primi Trinità non facevamo solo Trinità, ma mettevamo Trinità e Montbeltramo insieme. Le prime annate. Lì facevamo 88, è stato il primo anno che abbiamo messo insieme e poi 2000, per ricordi, 2000, aspetta,
Trying to remember.
99 invece è il primo anno che abbiamo messo il vino in bottiglia con scritto solo Trinità.
Yeah, before from 1988.
100% grape for Trinità.
Okay, so as of 99 was when you first bottled it that way, Trinità, okay.
Only Trinità, yes,
Done.
from Trinità.
Okay, now you were kind enough to send me several vintages of this, which I really appreciate. I've enjoyed the wines. And we're going to talk specifically about 5 wines today, starting with 2010 and going backwards, because we want to show people how well these wines age. I tried them this morning, they're in beautiful shape. Let's talk a little bit, before we get into those wines, about the most recent years from 2011 up to 2020 and 21. Tell me a little bit about those vintages and how the wines tasted out, how you expect those wines to age, what were the best vintages during this past decade.
Prima di fare la selezione dal 10 al 4, vuole che vi parli un po' delle annate dall'11 al 21, quindi quali sono i migliori, cosa ti aspetti in invecchiamento?
Dall'11 al 21. Beh, dall'11 al 21 diciamo tutte belle annate, per cui l'ultima annata con qualità bassa sull'uva è 2002.
Yeah, it's from 2011, almost all the vintages have been pretty good. In the last 20 years, the worst we had was 2002.
Sì, bisogna dire che io che ho incominciato a lavorare un po' in cantina già negli anni 70, sugli anni 70, su 10 annate abbiamo avuto 2 annate con uve corrette, belle, le altre avevano quasi sempre dei problemi più o meno gravi, mentre invece in queste annate qua abbiamo dal 90 in avanti abbiamo avuto tutta una serie di annate molto buone. Dal 90 al 2021 abbiamo avuto 3 annate nuove, 91, 92, 2002.
Okay. So Roberto is telling
In 30 anni.
Yeah, he started to work in the 70s, and from there it was more common to have bad vintages than good. So maybe you had 2 good vintages in 10, but now in the last, we can say 30 years from the 90s, we only had 3 bad vintages, which were 91, 92, and 2002, and stop. So the others were all good vintages.
Sì, diciamo le annate possono essere un po' diverse, i vini, però magari uno è più buono adesso, l'altro è più buono fra 3 anni. Però quando parti con dell'uva perfetta è difficile fare del vino cattivo.
Yeah, so in general, grapes, the quality of the grapes is very high. So we start from a good grapes, and so it's what can change. Every vintage is slightly different. Maybe one evolves later or sooner, but in general they are all good.
Sì, dopo voi giornalisti siete abituati a dire così o così, eh? le annate.
Yeah, you usually judge either super good or not good. you journalists.
Well, it becomes easy for people to do that, and they want to. Everybody, I think the word great, and sometimes in Italy you use different terms, but the word great, I think, is overused. And it's like, if somebody will try a wine, they'll say, well, it wasn't great, but not everything is meant to be great. You know, it's like the 18 vintage right now for Roero, and I know you've released your Trinità Roero, but it's not a big, powerful vintage, but it's a beautiful vintage. So, you know, the whole thumbs up, thumbs down thing is a mistake, especially when it comes to wines of this quality. I just had a question from Beverly, you know, on that subject. When 2014 was released, a lot of people said, well, that's not a very good vintage. It was rainy, it was cold, and yet the wines have turned out beautifully. So tell us a little bit about that vintage.
Yeah. Proprio
Del 2014 che è stato un'annata brutta.
allora, nel Roero 14 non è stata male, è stato più difficile a ragione di Barolo 2014. Qui l'uva era bella, magari mezzo grado in meno di alcol rispetto al 15, Però i vini sono molto buoni, sono molto eleganti, tannini molto fini.
So 14 in Roero has been a good vintage actually. So grapes were good. Maybe alcohol is a bit lower,
Right.
but wines are very elegant, and so also 14 is good in
Yes.
Roero.
Yeah.
Sì, sì. Anche un'annata tipo l'altra domenica, due sere fa, avevamo qui un amico della Svizzera che ha un bellissimo ristorante. Abbiamo bevuto un Magnum di Trinità 2003. 2003, molti tuoi colleghi hanno detto è andata troppo calda, i vini non sono buoni. 2003 adesso è incredibilmente buono.
Yeah, he's talking about 2003, which
Really?
the press they was like told as a
They
too
hated that
hot,
vintage, right?
not a good one.
Right.
And actually they tried 2003 last year with a friend, and it was great. So after 20 years.
That's great.
It's hard.
Because you're absolutely right. It was just, if you can even find the wine anymore, people were just, early reviews were just, it couldn't be very good because it was so hot that year. And of course, now with the heat, and we can talk about climate change a little bit, but you're able to do different, you've experienced warmer vintages, you're able to work differently in the vineyard. So, you know,
Yeah,
you said you've had so many good vintages lately. Some people would say maybe that's, you know, it's almost too much, and maybe things are going to an extreme. Maybe it's too hot every year. But what do you think about that? How do you work in the vineyards now to mitigate some of the hotter temperatures?
Per parlare del riscaldamento globale, cosa succede in vigna? Facciamo qualcosa di particolare per venire...
Beh, il problema per il riscaldamento globale è più sulle uve bianche. Allora lì bisogna trovare proprio il momento giusto per la raccolta. Cerchiamo già di tenere le uve coperte dalle foglie, questa è una cosa importante. Quindi l'uva resta ombreggiata e non si scalda troppo come quando il sole è molto intenso. Ma soprattutto bisogna trovare il momento giusto per iniziare la raccolta, specialmente perché in Piemonte si fa la vendemmia a mano, quindi non è che in 2 giorni raccogli tutto. Devi scegliere bene i momenti di vendemmia.
Well, the biggest problem we're having so far with the heat is with the white grapes.
Okay.
And what we are trying to do first is to keep the bunches more covered in the vines with the leaves first. And then also what is important is to find the best moment to start the harvest.
Okay.
So in particular here where we harvest by hand, so it's not immediate. So you need to calculate that maybe you need 2 weeks to harvest and start in the proper place in the proper moment.
Sì, dopo in Piemonte la viticoltura è tutta in collina, quindi si gioca molto sulle esposizioni. Quindi adesso noi non piantiamo più Arneisa Sud, come invece per Arenese abbiamo ancora un po' di Arneisa Sud, ma si impianta a est o addirittura anche a nord.
Yeah, here that we have hills, it's another way to avoid too hot the heat.
Right. And with different exposures, they're going to ripen at different times. Right?
They don't grow anymore. The Arneise facing south, but sometimes also facing north. So they are changing the position of the vineyards also.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about we talked about that past decade. Let's start with 2010 now and work our way back. And I know everyone watching today knows that Roero, Rosso, we don't have to say Rosso, but the red wine is 100% Nebbiolo. But there are some people that'll be watching this on YouTube and they may not know that. So I just wanted to emphasize that. But as I said, you sent me some wonderful vintages, and let's start off and work our way backwards, starting with 2010, which was a beautiful vintage. So I tasted the wine this morning. It's in beautiful shape. It has at least another, it's at 6-8 years, maybe even a decade to go. Tell me about 2010.
2010.
Assaggiamo.
Sì, spieghi un po' com'è.
Sì. Ma 2010 è un'annata molto possiamo definirla muscolosa, un po' simile, l'ultima annata che è un po' simile è 2016, che hanno 16 a little bit similar a 2010 come carattere.
Both outstanding.
Sì?
Sorry?
Both were outstanding years.
Yeah, and quite strong, he was saying, masculine. He
Sì,
was
sì.
describing.
Sì, è un colore abbastanza intenso, tannini bei maturi, non tannini green tanning, ma tannini presenti che danno struttura in bocca, come anche il 2016 è un po' su questo stile. Mentre invece il 2009 è un vino molto elegante, molto fine, anche se sono due vini prodotti nello stesso modo. Ti dico questo perché Malvira si può dividere la produzione dei vini rossi da prima del 2009 a dopo il 2009. Prego.
Okay. Yeah, first he was saying that the 10 has a strength, particular strength in color, in tannins, very like similar to the 16. So both great and masculine vintages.
Right.
While the 9 it's quite different. It's more elegant, more delicate, and he wanted to underline a difference that's in the winemaking of Malvira, starting from 2009. So there is a change from 2009.
Different style di vinification.
Yeah, different vinification.
E la diversità è legata a due cose: macerazione a freddo per una settimana della vinaccia con il pigiato e niente uso di solfiti in fermentazione, solfiti aggiunti solo dopo la fermentazione malolattica, quando mettevamo il vino in legno.
Okay, so from 2009 we started to use a cold maceration,
Right.
with grape, with the skins, and also we started to not add sulfites until the malolactic fermentation. So until during the fermentation, no sulfites added, also only when we move the wine for the aging in the wooden barrels.
Okay.
So from 2009 they are made like this.
Da quell'annata abbiamo ottenuto vini con colore un po' meno intenso, ma un colore molto stabile che non cambia, tannini più eleganti, meno aggressivi.
Yeah, what we noticed is that the wines from 2009 up are more, have a color more, maybe less intense a bit,
Right.
but that is not changing in the years. So
Molto stabile.
Stable, yeah.
Right.
And also the tannins are not aggressive, are very elegant.
E anche i profumi, secondo me, molto più floreali, molto più di frutta, sanno.
Yeah,
Specialmente poi il 2009.
Yeah, in particular 2009, but in general, since that year, also the flavors are more floral, fruity, more delicate.
Okay. Now let's talk about 2008, which I have a very fond spot in my heart for your wines and for Barolo Barbaresco. That was really it came after 2007, and a lot of American publications, were crazy about 2007, very warm vintage, very ripe fruit and soft tannins. But 2008 is a much more Piemontese vintage, much more classic vintage.
È più strong.
Exactly. And it's absolutely showing beautifully. I tasted it this morning, and it's just, it has at least another half a dozen years of age ahead of it. And I may be conservative on that. I don't like to drink them too old, but tell us about 2008, why that was so special.
2008?
Sì, 2008 è giustissimo cosa hai detto. È di nuovo un vino un po' sullo stile 2010, però con vinificazione come facevamo prima, quindi niente macerazione a freddo e quindi tannini molto diversi, proprio come tipologia di tannino. E anche i profumi sono di un'altra tipologia, sono un pochino più profumi di legno, di cuoio, di cioccolata. più che di frutta vera e propria.
Yeah, it's he totally agrees with you concerning the characteristics of the vintage, which is powerful, more typical Piedmontese, a bit similar to the 2010. But to make this wine, we weren't still using the cold maceration, so it was a traditional method of making this wine.
Right.
Different kind of tannin, and also different kind of sense of notes in the flavor of this wine. So it's more chocolate, more
Cuoio, quello che usano per le cinghie, per le scarpe.
yeah, I forgot the name of this scent, but anyway, more spicy than floral and fruity.
Right, and something that's been pointed out by many journalists, I've noticed it as well, but even though the climate has been changing and it's a little bit warmer these past 10, 15 years, there seems to be a direct link with particular years. So the years of Roero or Barolo or Barbaresco, all Nebbiolo, for example, the 8s seem to be all very similar, 2008, 2018, 1998. Now, 2018 is a little bit lighter than 2008, but the wines have beautiful, very precise acidity. Whereas 2006, 2016, 1996, very powerful wines. And even the 7s, like 1997, 2007, 2017, were more maybe international vintages. I don't like to use that word, but they were riper years. So that's something to look for with it, and it's held up for the most part. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
C'è una connessione tra ogni 10 anni, quindi
Sì,
gli 8 e 18, i 98, i 7 e 17 più piacevoli.
Sì. Io vedo anche 99, 2009, 19,
Right.
sono di nuovo una successione molto,
Yeah,
molto
very
simile.
similar. Also
Tre grandi annate. Sì.
Exactly.
Invece, dicevo prima, 2008, 2006, 2004, qui sono di nuovo simili, perché sono 3 annate con temperature più basse, vini un po' più piemontesi, come dicevi prima, acidità un pochino più alta, tannini più verdi, ma con il tempo che diventano interessanti. Quindi io non so dire se è meglio il sistema di vinificazione che avevamo in questo periodo o dopo il 2009, perché adesso bevi i vini, anche il 99, 2000, 2001, sono vini incredibilmente buoni. Quindi dirò questo fra 10-15 anni, se questi vini di oggi saranno buoni così dopo, quando avranno 30 anni.
Yeah, Roberto was pointing out that first the vintages like 2008, 6, and 4, they are quite similar. So they are more traditional, as you were saying, colder vintages.
Okay.
In general, both the 3 of them. So tannins green at the beginning, but with evolving in an interesting, very interesting way. What it's hard to say now is if it's better the new vinification with cold maceration or the old style. So we don't know yet. We still have to wait for the evolution of the new vintages and to see what is better for the wine.
Sì, è anche vero che le uve sono diverse perché il clima è già cambiato in questi 20 anni.
Yeah, and in the meanwhile, climate changed in these few years, so it's even harder to say.
Exactly. Okay. Well, a few words about the 2006, because of the wines you sent me, that's been my favorite. And for years, I've loved the 2006 Barolo and Barbaresco, and people would say, oh, these wines will never come around. They're going to take forever to age. Well, I think they're wrong when they say they'll never come around. They will take a long time to age. And here we are, a wine that's now almost 16 years old, and it's in absolutely beautiful shape. It's not at peak at all. It's got at least another 7, 8, maybe even 10 years. But I thought it was just one of the great vintages of the last 25 years.
Sì, no problem. Nessun problema. Infatti abbiamo l'esperienza in 99, 2001, 98, sono buonissimi adesso, proprio
Yeah.
buoni, ma durano ancora altri 10 anni senza problemi.
Yeah, also like a 99 or a 98 can still last 10 years. So yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Still
Absolutely.
have, yeah.
Okay. And now
But-
all of these, I'm sorry, all of these wines that we've talked about, like 2006 and 2005, we're not talking about today, but Beverly just left a note that these wines are still available if people want to buy those. Now, those were all Roero riserva. Now, the 2004, which is the last one we'll talk about, that was not a riserva, but a Roero superiore.
Sì. Lì è cambiata la denominazione, perché da un DOC siamo passati in DOCG. Quindi i vini DOCG non possono avere la scritta superiore, ma riserva. Diciamo, il livello era lo stesso, però la legislazione è cambiata la denominazione e cambia la terminologia.
They're the same wines, it's just that year they changed from DOC to DOCG. So the terminology is different on the label. Okay.
La diversità è solo data da quello. Poi qui abbiamo, specialmente 2006 e 2004, qui abbiamo 2 vendemmie che sono già ancora fatte dopo il 20 di ottobre, mentre invece le vendemmie che facciamo adesso con i violi li facciamo già a settembre o prima settimana di ottobre. Quindi anche lì, sai, hai l'ultimo mese con temperature molto diverse negli ultimi 20 anni. E l'ultimo mese è molto importante per l'uva che porti poi in cantina come caratteristica.
So back in 2006, 2004, you were harvesting the grapes about the 20th of October.
Yeah.
Now with these newer vintages, you're harvesting them in September. A huge difference in the weather over the last 20 years. So.
Yeah, it's a huge difference also because of that in the grapes that you bring to the cellar. So also they are already different at the beginning because they have a different climate when they are harvested.
Ricordo il Barbera San Michele 2004 l'avevamo raccolto dopo i Santi, quindi il 3 o il 4 di novembre.
Yeah, he was
eccezionale.
Remembering that the grapes of Barbera, with which we made the Barbera Superiore 2004, they were harvested after the beginning of November.
Really?
So,
Wow.
and they were great grapes and a great wine also.
I would love to try that one. That's amazing. Wow, November. Okay.
We still have some bottles.
Okay.
Se vieni al canale facciamo poi degustazione Barbera.
Okay. Okay.
We'll keep a bottle for you.
Perfetto. We have only a few minutes left, but the wines are lovely and your story is lovely. And part of that story is the fact that you have a beautiful winery and you have a relais. I never seem to pronounce that name right, but people can stay there. Here's a beautiful shot of one of the rooms. Tell us about the hospitality at
Cantina abbiamo anche il relais, parlane un po'.
Sì, noi abbiamo aperto Villa Tiboldi nel 2003, quindi abbiamo già fatto un po' di esperienza. Abbiamo restaurato questa vecchia casa che si trova proprio in mezzo alle vigne di Santissima Trinità. E l'idea è stata quella di creare una struttura per gli amici che venivano a trovare, quella di creare un hotel. Prego.
Yeah, so Villa Tiboldi, now we opened it in 2003, so now we already have some experience about the relais. It comes from an old house in the middle of Santissima Trinità, of the crew of Santissima Trinità. And at the beginning, our idea was to build something for our friends, to welcome our friends here. So not for the wine, but also for food and in the relais to sleep.
E questo secondo noi serve molto per far capire lo spirito della nostra cantina, cioè una persona, un turista che viene qui da noi e si ferma a dormire 1, 2, 3 notti a Villa Tiboldi, certamente si ricorderà che ha dormito in mezzo alla vigna Trinità, in mezzo al nebbiolo. E secondo me è un messaggio molto bello, una cosa che si ricorda, ecco. Adatto per una piccola cantina come siamo noi.
Yeah, it's having Villa Tiboldi. It's a way also to let people know and remember more about the winery itself, because if tourists from, I don't know, Europe or wherever,
Right.
they sleep here for 2-3 nights, then they remember that Malvira and Villa Tiboldi are in the middle of the Cru Santissima Trinità, which is the wine that they had for dinner or for lunch. So it's an interesting experience for the winery also.
Sì, proprio full immersion nella Roero.
Exactly. Yeah, full immersion. Yeah, that's a great point. They definitely, you know, it's one thing to stop at a winery and try the wines, and then after 3 or 4 of those visits, you're like, well, you know, which wines did I like the best? But when you stay at the winery, at the beautiful relay, that definitely cements that relationship. So, as Beverly says, you immediately feel welcome when you head there. So.
Villa Tiboldi per noi non è importante come business, è importante come comunicazione.
Yeah, it's not a business by itself. It's for us, it's communication more. Villa Tiboldi, for the communication is important.
And how is my friend Sandro Minella working with you? You've been a friend for many years.
Yeah, che detto che è amico di Sandro Minella, come è stato lavorare con lui.
Sì, è stata una bella esperienza, però adesso ha avuto problemi con il Covid e ha un po' di problema di salute.
Yes,
allora adesso è 2 settimane che è a casa.
Okay.
Vediamo.
All right.
And
Andare.
it's been an interesting experience, but now he has some health problem. So
Oh,
sadly, he's been at home.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, in the last 2 weeks, he's been at home. So
Okay.
yeah, that's why he's not here.
All right. Well, hopefully he, you know, recovers very
No,
quickly.
No.
Sorry to hear
Questo
that.
non è Covid, ma ha avuto qualche postumo, diciamo.
yeah, it's connected to COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. One more picture to put up before we leave, and we have to put this up, but I've known Roberto for many, many years. And when I visited, I also met his brother Massimo, who's just as responsible for the way things run around there. So here's a photo. And Massimo is with the blue sweater there. And who are the other people in this photo?
The next generation.
Sì, c'è Giacomo, che è il mio figlio, che è il nuovo enologo di cantina, e poi Francesco, Pietro, anche loro sono tecnici. Francesco 3 anni adesso che è entrato, e invece Pietro, quello il signore ragazzo con gli occhiali, è l'ultimo che è entrato in azienda, appena finito la scuola lo scorso anno. Adesso sta trovando il suo ruolo.
Yeah, we have here the new generation of Malvira. So in the front of the picture, there is Francesco, one of Massimo's sons, who started to work here 3 years ago.
Okay.
He's really working in the vineyards. Then in the back, there is Giacomo, Roberto's son, who's the new winemaker. And then the one with the glasses is Pietro, another son of Massimo, and he just started in the last year, so he's finding his place in the cellar, in the winery.
I love the photo because it just not only a beautiful composition, but it just reminds people of how important family is.
Poi manca le 2 più importanti, manca mia moglie Patrizia e la figlia di Massimo, Lucia.
Yes,
Due.
Yeah,
le donne sono sempre quelli che comandano tutto. Quindi...
Yeah, you would have been in trouble if you didn't mention your wife. So.
Yeah, exactly. So the two boss, the boss, Patrizia.
Exactly. Okay.
And also the other lady of the winery, Lucia, which is Massimo's daughter. Okay. She's working at Villa Tiboldi.
Great. Well, this has been a great experience, of enjoyable discussion. Maria, thank you for the translation, and Roberto, sempre un piacere. Io spero tornare a Villa Tiboldi molto presto.
Sì, ci vediamo al Vinitaly? Vieni a Verona?
No, non quest'anno, no.
Allora a Piemonte solo.
Next time in Piedmont.
Okay.
O Chicago.
Oh, Chicago.
Se,
sì.
Se Beverly mi invita, non mi invita mai Beverly.
Okay.
Roberto is telling that Beverly is never inviting him.
You said that, not me. So, all right. Well, thank you again. And yeah, 4th of Chicago. Yeah. Fingers crossed for much better weather, that you get some, everything becomes more normal in the vineyard. So for 2021, 2022, excuse me. So
Yeah.
Ancora
Saranno
grazie.
dei concentrati.
Yeah,
Okay.
very concentrated ones. Thank
Yes.
you.
Ciao, Laura,
Ancora grazie. Buona giornata.
Ciao.
Ciao ciao.